Welcome to Road to Indy TV, everybody. I'm Tony Laporta, and I'm excited to be back here in Toronto, Ontario after a weekend off.
I'm Rob Houghton, thrilled to be here as well. Always a great race up here in TO.
We are in the streets of Toronto, Ontario this weekend, and all three rungs of the Mazda Road to Indy, presented by Cooper Tires, are back on track. That, of course, includes the USF 2000, Pro Mazda, and Indy Lights Championships presented by Cooper Tires, Rob.
Tony, 4 race weekends still to go, but here in Toronto, so unbelievably challenging. The pavement, the concrete in every corner, and of course the walls all around this racetrack. There's peril around every corner. On today's episode, we take in great racing here in the streets of Toronto. I sit down to get to know Colin Kaminsky a little bit better. We have an overall chill weekend here in Canada, and Rob takes us through the paddock to teach us a little bit more about the inside of the Mazda Road to Indy. All that and more coming up on this week's episode of Road to Indy TV. This weekend, the Mazda Road to Indy, presented by Cooper Tires, heads north of the border to Toronto, Ontario. And even though he's not from north of the border, I know his favorite sport is Canada's pastime.
That would be, you'd be right.
Colin Kaminsky, Canada, hockey.
Ice hockey.
Ice hockey.
Oh yeah. That is my sport.
Why do you love it?
Well, a lot of people with knives on their feet skating around in a frozen pond. What's not to love? I'm a goalie, I'm a goaltender, so I wake up in the morning, I get hit with vulcanized rubber. It's fun.
How'd you get started in hockey? I mean, have you been playing long?
No,
family thing?
Sort of like racing. I was late to it. So I was about 11 years old. I was watching the Chicago Blackhawks, favorite team. I was watching them on TV, and the goaltender let in what I perceived as a weak goal, and I was just like, you know what? I feel like I could do that. So I did.
Wow. Your dad used to race on the Mazda Road to Indy.
He did.
And not like when he was a kid, like
No.
last year.
Yeah, like
what's
last
Bob
year.
doing?
Bob, well, he's actually, you know what, he was over there and he just ditched me, so I don't know what that's about. But he's, we run spec racers in the SCCA,
Yeah.
so we're doing that a little bit. We were at Gingerman last weekend, picked up a win, not a big deal. But me and him, we do that together, we crew the cars together, it's fun. But yeah, he was doing, like, you know, he was doing the Pro Mazda the last couple years, but this year was kind of just take a seat, relax a little bit. He's been busy, you know, got a lot of stuff going on.
So we've had a lot of fun sitting down with Colin Kaminsky here in Toronto, getting to know this driver a little bit better. We're heading back out on track. Thanks for watching, folks.
Thank you.
Ow! This weekend, we are in Toronto, Ontario, and it's a time for another Drivers versus Tony. The driver this week, Dalton Kellett. Dalton, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, I'm in Canada, so I'm ready to be out.
Oh, that's just not fair.
It isn't fair, and what also isn't fair is Dalton has challenged me to an impromptu shootout here inside the paddock this weekend for the Mazda Road to Indy races. And behind Dalton, you see the 3 Cooper Tires.
I take these everywhere with me. I'm always ready for a shootout.
Dalton just unpacked them. He's always ready for a shootout. So how it's gonna work is, in this tire is 5 points, this tire is 5 points, and in this tire is 10 points. First to 15 points win. Does that sound like a shootout you agree to?
Let's do it.
All right. Ouch. Oh!
Run, Tony, run!
Good defense by the Dallara truck here today. Who do you want to see in your mirrors when you cross the finish line first? The guy that you just really want to beat.
I think Santi, just because like everything works him up, and I think coming second would just work him up even more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to beat a Rudy out of the line.
Yeah.
All right, take your third shot. Missed it. Narrow. Oh, finally. Please tell me you got that. I just out-Canadian a Canadian.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
Oh, red shots it. That's 10. Ouch.
Jesus.
Ready? Ah!
Oh. There we go.
They said I couldn't out-Canadian a Canadian, and I did. Dalton Kellett, This is the first challenge I feel like I've actually deserved on the win. You know, I ate more pie than Kyle Kirkwood in Indiana. I outspiked the volleyball in Florida against Keith Donegan, who's quite short. But this challenge, I feel like I actually earned it. Yeah. And I'm glad it could be against you.
Well, you brought it home, Tony, so congrats.
So as always, the Mazda Road to Indy, presented by Cooper Tires' annual trip north of the border here to the streets of Toronto was a wild card, Rob, and it got started right away in USF 2000.
Yeah, we saw some young guys like Rasmus Lint kind of step to the forefront, but it's also great to see Dakota Dickerson back here with Arms Up Motorsports. He looked very strong throughout the entire weekend. But again, you and I have watched Kyle Kirkwood in karting for the last number of years. The guy's an absolute phenom, and he's showing it here right now in USF 2000.
Absolutely. Kyle Kirkwood continuing to run away with the championship no matter what country he's racing in. He's been dominant. And then as we take a step up on the ladder system, we move to Pro Mazda, and things didn't really get any more simple there. Big championship shakeups in Pro Mazda.
The word I was going to use, shakeup, crazy. Parker Thompson comes in with a massive lead, has trouble in qualifying, starts last in race number 2, gets involved in an incident with David Malukas in race number 1. That's huge. Renus VK with a couple of pole positions. He's victorious on the weekend as well to get back in the win column. But the big story, Tony, of course, that huge wreck in race number 1 with Harrison Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. The best news, though, as we can report, is right after that accident, Harrison was up and walking, checked himself into the infield medical care center, and was released. That's the best news after that Pro Mazda wreck for sure, something neither of us have ever seen before.
Yeah, it was a crazy wreck down to the end of the back straightaway, but I think it speaks volumes to this Mazda Road to Indy to have the AMR safety crew from IndyCar here. They were right there. The truck was rolling before Harrison. I think he even came to a stop. We love having that as part of the Road to Indy because we want our drivers to be safe.
Absolutely, and then at the top of the Mazda Road to Indy, presented by Cooper Tires, of course, the Indy Lights Championship, and wow, big news there with Colton Herta after that qualifying crash.
Yeah, he gets a little too hot into turn number 8, final lap, trying to throw down a flyer, gets into the tires coming into that corner, and actually injures his hand. Again, that's going to have championship implications, but what a great run for Pato O'Ward. He showed again here this weekend.
And at least when you look back on race number 1, when conditions were really up in the air with a little bit of rain and a little bit of dry, that thing was a slip fest. But hey, Santiago Urrutia comes out with a second place and a smile like I've never seen on him before.
That was an absolutely wild race. You never know who was going to be up front. Santi went to the back, he came back forward. One of the guys I want to give props to, in addition to Pato O'Ward, Ryan Norman was the one driver that kind of kept his head about him, stayed on the track, no spins. He gets a podium finish. Great job for Ryan for sure.
So as always, the Streets of Toronto Grand Prix lives up to its reputation of being a wild card race here in the middle of the summer. All right, Rasmus Lind, how'd weigh-in go? What are we looking at numbers-wise here today?
I think on the qualifying was a bit difficult because like I had a bit of oversteer.
I'm asking you how much you weighed right there.
The weight, 151.
151, is that a good weight for you? Are you happy, or do you want to cut some pounds?
No, cut a bit, will be better.
Yeah, lose some weight, go for a run maybe, sweat a little bit harder.
Yeah, I will.
I heard that you swallowed a bag of marbles before they got you on the scale. Is that true?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Parker Thompson, we hate to interrupt you, but are you telling these folks that you're an IndyCar driver?
No, these folks are actually personal fans of mine. Look at this. They have Parker Thompson Racing stuff on.
Okay, so you can be honest with us. How much is he paying you guys?
I can't disclose that.
So how much, ma'am? How much is he paying you?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing? You're not a very good customer then.
Oh, jeez. We're #1 fans, that's all.
#1 fans.
They're not lying. Every year I come to TO.
Well, they're Canadians, right?
Of course.
Of course, they can't lie. I don't think that's in your guys' DNA.
Right.
So I hope we're not interrupting a phone call here. Oh, he just hung right up on him. Charles Finelli.
Calling customs in Rochester so I can get home when I land.
That's important to get through customs. Last time I talked to you, you were sitting in a lounge chair at Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama. Now you're lounging in Toronto, Ontario. This is just like the International Charles Finelli Lounging Tour.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you can't lounge back and relax before you get into absolute and total chaos, then, what else is there in life? I mean, you got to earn the race car, and you do that by relaxing.
I don't know if wiser words have ever been spoken. Or do I see boat shoes and Nomex race socks? If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Freeze time.
You can't. Somebody already said that. You can't say that. You got to pick a new one. That's not a rule. If you want to freeze time, you can have that.
Yeah, I want to freeze time.
What would you do with it? Good or evil?
Good, of course.
Good for you or good for other people?
For both.
Yeah, I have a real bad feeling about how this is going to go.
Welcome to another Insider segment here on Road to Indy TV. I'm going to start this particular segment by beginning in the Verizon IndyCar Series. Some big news just this past week as Gabby Chavez stepping out of the seat of his car in Harding Racing. That brought Connor Daly in to run here in Toronto. One of the interesting things is there's talking a lot about Indy Lights drivers potentially getting a chance to drive for Mike Harding's team, beginning with Pato O'Ward. I'm told that he poured a seat at Harding Racing last week and will indeed test with the IndyCar team next week at Mid-Ohio. Other drivers potentially testing for Harding, Colton Herta and Santiago Urrutia. Speaking of Colton Herta, also being linked potentially with the move to IndyCar next year with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing as a third car on that team. Another driver having some issues here, tough for Parker Thompson. I think everybody knows Parker does his best to try to put a budget together, but he's not one of the best funded guys in the paddock at all. A huge wreck at the start of race number 1 with David Malukas. The number I'm hearing to repair that car, a lot bigger than anybody thought it was going to be. Parker down right now, knows what he has to do. He's going to find some more sponsors. He's going to find some more partners who want to come on with this young Canadian to make sure he's going to be able to make it to the end of the season with the budget they do have in place. I expect Michael Duncalf, the team principal for Exclusive Autosports, to work with him as much as they can, because right now I'm hearing as well, if Parker can win this championship, Exclusive Autosport looking to move up to Indy Lights with their young Canadian star. Also very happy to hear that Arms Up Motorsports will very likely have Dakota Dickerson in the number 9 for the remainder of the year. A great young driver out of San Diego, obviously having a fantastic podium weekend here in Toronto. This is a guy that we need to watch for. A second opportunity here on the road to Indy. Dakota Dickerson could be a guy that we see at the top of the box, whether it's at Mid-Ohio or at Portland at the end of the season. This is a time when we start talking about 2019, new teams coming in, new drivers coming in. I'm sure our next Insider segment will be packed with news that you want to hear.
So a long and hot weekend here in Toronto comes to a close, Robin. When you look back on it, a pretty wild weekend for sure.
Well, this track is so challenging, Tony, and there's peril around every corner, as I said. You never know what's going to happen. And we saw Rex in turn 1 at the end of the back straightaway. Turn 8 was trouble for a lot of the drivers. This track's so challenging, and that's why the championship here is so tight.
So racing is in the books here in Toronto, Ontario. The good news, we're heading back to the U.S. after this weekend. We head to Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in Lexington, Ohio. IndyCar and the Mazda Road to Indy return to its Midwest roots. And Rob, when you look at that weekend, it's going to be very busy for our USF 2000 drivers.
Yeah, first run of the Mazda Road to Indy, a triple header, so lots of points up for grabs. The track just as challenging as the one here in Toronto, Tony. This is where the championship starts. You cannot make any mistakes as we push through to try to get to Portland.
Yeah, so the summer heat is definitely going to turn up when we get to Lexington, and the racing on track will be even hotter. So that's all from Toronto this weekend, but stay tuned as we head to Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in just a couple of days. For Rob Howden and everybody at Road to Indy TV, I'm Tony Laporta saying thanks, and we'll see you down the road.